The world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not, great God. I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Have sight of Proteus coming from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Poetry Surprises, and I hope you enjoyed that sonnet by William Wordsworth. It's an important sonnet for our times, I think. It's an important poem for our times because it reflects the alienation that humanity is currently suffering under this crisis that we're in at the moment, and more generally our sort of environmental issues that we're facing. The need to be in contact with nature, and that was something that was very important to Wordsworth, very important to the Romantics, and something that we're still learning 200 years later. Quite remarkable. But there's another reason why I wanted to read that poem, is because so far we've often been looking at sonnets, and we've been looking at the what I would call the roast beef and Yorkshire pudding English sonnet, and that was a Petrarchan sonnet, a sort of more of a souffle or a vol au vent or something. That's French, I know, but you know, bear with me. The structure is different. And it's prone to a much more complex analysis of things. It eschews this sort of big thumping end, but goes for a more reflective last 6 lines. And the rhyme scheme's therefore different. Instead of going for that famous GG at the end, the rhyming couplet, the last 6 lines go CDE, CDE. Now there are other variations for that, but you can look that up on Wikipedia. You don't need me to tell you about all the possible rhyme schemes that exist in sonnets. But it's an interesting and it is the original form of the sonnet, and it is a particularly interesting and challenging form in English. And Wordsworth loved it. Upon Westminster Bridge is also a Petrarchan sonnet. So do look at it, because if ever you're thinking about writing sonnets, you know, you've got options, you've got rhyme scheme options, and depending on your mood, and it's really difficult sometimes to pull off that last thump couplet, so sometimes you want to go for a more sophisticated model, and that's a sonnet that I think everybody has to admire. It's a wonderful piece of writing. Now I'd like to read you a sonnet that I wrote in memory of the poet Adrian Mitchell, another radical thinker, like Wordsworth in that sense of getting to the heart of things and showing a great humanity. Adrian was somebody that I knew on and off throughout my life. When I was younger in London, I went to his readings and met him, and then later in life, I met him in Scotland, re-met him in Scotland. And when Adrian died, I wanted to write something that remembered him. And I think I heard the news on Burns Night, and so I immediately started writing a poem. And it's quite interesting the way you find metaphors to run through a poem. And this one talks about snowfall and the innocence that a snow-covered landscape engenders, and the opportunity to find new pathways, new routes through the landscape. And I always saw Adrian as a kind of leader in this way. So this poem is called Burns Night, 2009. Tonight, the driven snow unearths the dead, unmaps the land where Burns importuned fame, then rode in red to guarantee his bread. Much more than truth, he chased down purse and name. And Adrian, you'd recognise this man, with mouths to feed and pain a gnawing threat. Who wouldn't welcome such a pension plan? As Rabbi says, a man's a man, and all that. So life makes fools of men and pays them back. The portrait, post, committee, royal gong. But you could never tread that beaten track, nor advocate a path your heart deemed wrong. A child, you trek across this fresh snowfall, redeeming ways we thought impassable. Finally, I'd like to end on a poem that commemorates a much bigger human event. In the late part of the Second World War, there was a massacre committed by the Nazis in a small town in central France called Oradour-sur-Glane. And this is now a war memorial, and you can visit it. And it's a very chilling experience, I can tell you. There is a museum, and you go underground, and when you come up, you enter this deserted town, which has still got tram lines, still got shop signs, still got balconies, still got burnt out remains of cars, and the German soldiers were told to go in and basically wipe out the population, and they did so with great effectiveness. Shot them, burnt them, and it's etched on that whole community. There is now another village called Oradour-sur-Glane, and it's sort of to one side, and it's modern. And this sort of graveyard of hope and daily life is preserved next door. And it's the sort of thing that you have very easily moved to write something for, but it's also very, very difficult. Because, you can so easily get into cliche and obvious reactions, which you don't really want to do. But the interesting thing about this one was that it had Singer sewing machines, which were preserved in buildings all around the town and still sitting there rusting. And for me, the idea became one of the stuttering cross stitch, as it says in the poem, sounding like the machine guns, and the idea of the singer being the poet, and of course the maker of gowns, and now a lasting symbol of the death and destruction of a community. So I thought I'd better have a go with that idea in mind, and I chose the sonnet for it because, as we've seen again and again, the sonnet is such an appropriate form. It can stand as a memorial. It's a processional, procedural, commemorative form, as much as it can be a plainful love form or a light, dancey form. Here it is. It's hard for me to sing and conjure hope from stones, broken metal, pointless signs. In burnt-out rooms, the rusty singers mope, rethreading towels of children's hats and gowns. While rubble halts the burnt-out car of a man from driving to his ordinary work. I can't compose Oradour-sur-Glane. Poetry seems obscenity, a means to shirk a mundane truth's stuttering cross-stitch. It's almost quaint. The tramways, power lines, the balconies, iron-wrought, this climbing vetch in a land where summer forever shines. But in every house's empty room, these silent singers sow their songs of doom. Yes, Oradour-sur-Glane is a very sad place, and if ever you're in central France, it's sort of north east of Angoulême, it's worth a visit. Anyway, that's all for today. Please subscribe to my poetry channel to keep in contact with what's going on, and hopefully I'll see you in a couple of days' time. Bye for now.